the ball, Jimenez! Goal!
He claims it. Distribution, brilliant. Landon Donovan, perfect on here from the USA. Can they do it here? Cross, and Dempsey's denied again. And Donovan scored! Oh, can you believe this? Go, USA! Certainly through! Oh, it's incredible!
And for those of you who still think we're from England.
All right, friends, welcome to the International Players Anthem, the absolute best podcast in North America. With me, as always, he's throwing nosy reporters in front of trains. It's Mr. Stephen Whiting.
That's right. I don't give a damn about your shield laws. Not here.
We're out here, man. We're out here. Stephen, how has the week treated you in Bartlesville, Oklahoma?
I'm going to be honest. It's been kind of a lazy week, but I drove almost 3,000 miles in 8 days. So I think I'm entitled to such laziness.
3,000
Monday
miles.
morning.
Yeah. Tell us about the week that was.
Well, unfortunately, I had to go down to Houston under some unfortunate circumstances. My right-hand man at my old television station in Waco, Texas, passed away suddenly in his sleep. So last Monday, there was it would have been an 8-hour drive if I drove straight to Houston, but I ended up driving down to Waco first, and then over to Houston, then back to Waco, and back to Bartlesville. Worked, and then, as has been documented many a time on the old podcast here, my girlfriend lives in Peoria, Illinois, so it is literally 8 hours in the opposite direction. So Saturday morning, got up at 4 a.m., left at 5 a.m., got there, spent the Valentine's Day weekend with her, came back through rain, sleet, ice, snow, literally everything you can imagine. I've never been so happy to see the Missouri state line in my life. Got back to Bartlesville, America at 1:15 p.m., was at work by 1:30 p.m., worked a full shift at the old cafe, and it's pretty much been recuperation time since then.
Well, Stephen, a lot of thoughts. Sorry for your loss. I'm sorry for the intense road trip, and I'm sorry that you had to spend Valentine's Day weekend in the frigid ice storm that is most of the continental United States. So trouble all around, but sounds like you are a better man for the journey. And no, but seriously, man, my condolences on the loss.
I appreciate it.
All the while, I think, pardon our French, I think it's fair to say that a fuck ton of stuff has happened in the world of soccer. We have an absolutely wide beat, and we like to talk about all things soccer related. So quite a bit of news items to go through, quite a bit of things to discuss. We're going to try and just get into everything. We're going to try and not waste too much time. We're not going to meander. And as always, geographically, we like to start in North America. Big news, Major League Soccer buying back Chivas USA. Stephen, your thoughts?
Well, for all intents and purposes, it seems like this was the right move. Obviously, Chivas USA was just, I believe the colloquial term is dumpster fire. Complete mess. It was, it's been an experiment in some manner with Chivas USA, Chivas de Guadalajara. Big name club down in Liga MX, very prestigious, historic club. It just quite simply hasn't worked out, and a lot of people commending the MLS on the way they handle this because they waited until Chivas USA completely bottomed out. I mean, they're pretty terrible. Definitely the worst team in the league this year, and I believe Alexi Lawless used the analogy of flipping a house. We're getting them back at a rock bottom price. They're going to find some investors that'll build a new stadium in Los Angeles, and and based on the comments from the Vergara family, who own Chivas Guadalajara and Chivas USA, it's in the best interest of everyone involved, and so commendable. That's great. You never like to see a team that doesn't have the full attention of its owners, and now at least that club appears to be, on a different path. So I think kudos all around.
Terrific. Some quick news. So this week, Santos Laguna and León playing in South America's Copa Libertadores, two basically Mexican clubs just basically going all out in the South American tournament. We're still at the group stages of the competition, so Santos won, and León got a very tough point on the road at what was basically the highest altitude away stadium in South America during this tournament. So both sides are to be commended, although León did miss a penalty that would have given them a 2-1 result. So Copa Libertadores in action. Stephen's written quite a bit about it on the site, so definitely check it out. Catch up. It's a fun tournament, worth your time. I feel like we're really bearing the lead in our commitment to sort of shoving our own backyard's news down everybody's throats. But it's been it's just stuff is happening all around. So why don't we get into something that's maybe just a tad more interesting, a tad more global, and that's your World Cup Minute.
Yes, the World Cup Minute.
All right, your World Cup Minute. English manager Roy Hodgson admitting that he's basically fearing for fan safety down in Brazil. He basically says that he has great faith in the Brazilian government, but he's scared. Last year the Confederations Cup in Brazil, saw all sorts of violent protests conducted by Brazilians who were angry about all of the wasteful spending. So Roy Hodgson, English manager, admits that he's kind of afraid for fan safety. Stephen.
Yeah, in other news in negative light, Belgian goalkeepers Thibaut Courtois, who plays for Atletico Madrid and is loaned out by Chelsea, and Simon Mignolet of Liverpool, having a bit of a war of words about who should be the starting goalkeeper, kind of reminiscent of the Jans Lehmann Oliver Kahn drama back in the day. If you go back that far into the early 2000s, Germany national team, two big name goalkeepers that had a little bit of a war of words, but basically Mignolet doesn't think he should be number 2, and neither does the other one, and it's your standard soap opera, I want to be starting at the World Cup kind of stuff. Also, Ramon, I don't know if you heard about this, but Russia, they called up the wrong national team player.
Ooh.
Yeah, those names in Russia can get a little bit tricky, let me tell you. So what happened was, apparently the name of Andrei Semyonov is super popular in Russia. I would not have known that Andrei Semyonov would be the John Smith of, Eastern Europe, but there you go. And there's one who plays for club team Terek Grozny and one who plays for club team Lokomotiv Moscow. Well, they accidentally notified the Lokomotiv Moscow player, who doesn't even start for his team. He's a reserve player. And there was a lot of congratulations and shock all around. Fortunately, they got the situation sorted out. But the one who was wrongly called up said, I was surprised, to put it mildly, but I do have an experience with the under-21 team. I will do my best to get a real call-up in the future.
That's beautiful. All right, elsewhere, FIFA backing the Brazilian security. The FIFA director of security is a guy named Ralph Mochski, and I apologize for botching the name. He is a former Interpol director, so this is a guy that knows security. This is a guy that knows shadowy figures. This is the kind of guy that you'll find on a platform, on a train platform in a trench coat with a top hat on. He basically thinks that everything's going to be just fine. He doesn't feel that the competition or the spectators are going to be any sort of protest. The protests are basically starting again around the government spending. So people are mad at the Brazilian government, not at the World Cup participants. FIFA back Brazil security. Elsewhere, former Spanish stalwart Carlos Puyol. You may remember him as the World Cup winning basically backline anchor, the dude with the long hair that scored a pretty thrilling header against Germany, if I'm not mistaken, in the semifinals to put Spain through to the final against the Netherlands. He's now 36 years old. He's probably not going to make the squad. The Spanish assistant coach, Grande is the last name, basically saying, hey, this dude isn't in shape. He hasn't been playing in La Liga. He's probably not going to make the team. But also basically emphasizing that, hey, I know you guys think that this generation of Spaniards is old, this once-in-a-generation dominant team is old, but we're Spain. We got talent everywhere, and it won't be a big deal. However, a very familiar, kind of iconic face, not expected to be at the World Cup. Speaking of mid to late 30-somethings that may or may not get to the World Cup, I'll tell you one guy that will be there, and that's Didier Drogba, who basically going to be huge. Ivory Coast manager, basically putting all his eggs in that basket, and he has an opportunity to have this colossal swan song down at the World Cup. He's going to be the captain. So there you go. And this week, the great Luis Felipe Scolari dismissed the burden of any sort of Brazilian pressure to win the tournament. Basically says that everything's going to go their way, that this is a great home field advantage. He's excited. He's saying all the positive things. And he basically thinks that they're going to win the World Cup. And in geopolitical human rights World Cup news, almost 1,000 Indians have died in Qatar over the last 4 years. And that's quite a few of blue-collar workers that are working to build the World Cup. Jury's still out on whether or not this is actually World Cup related. The Indian embassy maintains that that's relatively normal. But quite a few folks are basically saying, hey, you guys got Indian workers with dangerous conditions, working overtime to build these stadiums, and that has been a huge part of the death count.
Yep, and that's something we looked at a couple months ago when FIFA released that report. And I'm sure there will be plenty more information coming out on that. Also, geopolitical related, everybody's probably aware of the unrest in Ukraine going on right now, literally playing out live across the world via YouTube and other internet sources. They had to move a Europa League game that was supposed to be played there today between Valencia and Dynamo Kiev, but the friendly in the Ukraine between the United States and Ukraine about 2.5 weeks from now on March 5th, still set to go ahead according to U.S. Soccer on Tuesday. Now, that's not to say that they aren't exploring other options should the need arise, but most of the protests and unrest coming in Kiev, while the game will be played in Kharkiv, which is about 300 miles east of that. So right now they're thinking they'll be able to skirt a lot of that stuff, but of note, the last time a friendly involving the U.S. team was canceled came 3 years ago when a match against Egypt was scrapped due to political unrest taking place in the country then. So familiar scenes, I guess, in the reasons that we have had to cancel a friendly, but supposedly all is well aside from the violence and death in Kiev.
And folks, I think that is your World Cup Minute. All right, Steven, so we got the housekeeping out of the way. We got the North American stuff. We got the World Cup stuff. We got all of these sort of dominoes setting up. But the bottom line is that this was a pretty colossal week. If you're a soccer fan, if you're a guy that's got a 9-to-5 kind of job, this was the kind of week where you wanted to download apps and talk to your local cable provider so you could basically just strap in and watch all of the shit that's happening. Okay, and what's happening? I'm talking about the Champions League, and I'm talking about basically we're in the Sweet 16 of the Champions League. The best of the best, cream of the crop, clubs playing each other, and it's the kind of thing where if you're a casual fan, you tune in for the big games, right? We had Barcelona playing Manchester City, we had Bayern Munich playing Arsenal. That's basically 4 of the 10 or so most known clubs in the world. That said, and Stephen, we'll start there. I want to get your thoughts on the game. Really no major surprises. I think you and I both had Barcelona. You and I both had Bayern Munich. We'll start with what happened Tuesday, and then but before we get into the game itself, one thing that has basically both games 2-0 results. Bayern Munich and Barcelona winning, all but through to the Elite Eight, for lack of a better term. Yeah, unfortunately, Stephen, both games decided by red cards. And in both instances, the slight underdog turned into the heavy home dog and really didn't have much of a chance in the game. And now that it's prompted many around the game to say, hey, if someone gets taken down in the box and a penalty is awarded, why don't we just stop it at that? Do we have to issue a red card? Do we have to essentially end the game, suck the wind out of the sails? Everybody watching, unless you're a Barca fan, unless you're a Bayern fan, in other words, maybe 80% of the people watching want to see a good game, want to see a competitive game, and this is just far too great of an advantage to award a red card on top of awarding a penalty. That's something that hopefully can be altered in the future. But the game itself, Wind out of the sails pretty quickly, Steven. What were your thoughts? We'll start with Barca and Man City.
Yeah, well, I'm gonna kind of step back and I guess I'm gonna kind of jump between both big picture and small picture. One of the greatest instances of good refereeing that I can recall is last year's Champions League final between Bayern Munich and Borussia Dortmund, where Bayern Munich took an early 1-0 lead, I believe, and then a foul was committed in the box on Borussia Dortmund. It was a last player. It wasn't a goalkeeper foul, I believe, like the one in the Arsenal game. It was more like the Man City foul. And they chose not to – they didn't card him at all. Dortmund got the penalty, tied it up, and Bayern Munich eventually went on to win in the dying stages of regulation. But I remember having somebody who was new to soccer texting me and saying, I don't understand why they didn't red card him. I mean, based on my limited knowledge, if you're the last player, et cetera, it should be a red card. And basically what I told him was the referee did a great job, because as a referee, you never want to influence the game. You want to let the players play the game. A foul had been committed. Penalty was a fair, just result for that. As far as the red card, it gets really interesting here, because we've got all sorts of scenarios flying around. Should Demichelis have been red carded in the Barcelona game? Yes, it should have. Should it have been a penalty? No, it should not, because it was actually outside of the box. It was clear at normal speed. It was clear in slow-mo photos. That shouldn't have been a penalty, and I don't blame Manuel Pellegrini, the Manchester City coach, for being livid about the issue. But the second goal, they shouldn't have given up either. There's no reason Joe Hart shouldn't have saved that. So it's unfortunate, I think, as far as the Manchester City result goes, because the team played really well most of the game. And so it's tough. As far as the red card goes, yes, should have been a penalty. Had it been in the box, I still think he should have been sent off. It was a pretty egregious from behind foul. Now, the Arsenal one with Bayern Munich becomes a little more interesting. It was a great ball in. It's Arjen Robben versus the goalkeeper. Goalkeeper dives for the ball, misses, and gets the player. Now, we saw a foul kind of like this, I believe, in the Arsenal-Liverpool game, and the goalkeeper was not sent off. I don't think the goalkeeper should have been sent off. It's definitely a letter of the law thing. But again, if it's not endangering the player, I think you need to level the playing field. Okay, a penalty kick, I think, is something like a 65% convert rate most of the time. And the interesting thing, too, is they missed the penalty kick. Bayern Munich did on that particular foul. So it's just tough to say. I would say, in general, you would you would say penalty kick and you're even. But in that instance, I don't know. Maybe it was fair because Bayern Munich got a player sent off. They weren't able to convert the chance. Long story short, yes, I think that a penalty is enough, barring a dangerous situation. I'll leave it at that.
Yeah, in terms of the game itself, yeah, I think just in general, any casual observer was just kind of upset that they kind of carved out this block of time to watch the game, and it was just sort of decided with such a it just felt over in both cases with the red card. Certainly there was the Ozil PK in the Arsenal game that really took the wind out of Arsenal's sails. But in general, you now have, I think you can't help but to just be blown away by what Barcelona was able to do. A team that's absolutely dominated world soccer since about 2008. You expect a team that was absolutely sort of deconstructed last year at the hands of Bayern Munich, and you think, okay, this team's reign at the top is officially over. But they came out and they played what we're used to seeing from Barcelona, which is possession. Man City, very much a similar type of team in terms of how they were built, how they were designed to play, molded after Barcelona. They share a lot of personnel figures that came over from Barcelona, so a student master kind of a thing there. And Barcelona just absolutely shut him down like a dad playing basketball against his son. I was really impressed. That was just some driveway action right there. Bayern Munich, what can you say? An indomitable force that should steamroll through this bracket, no matter who's in front of them. The fact that it was Arsenal, a team that's at the top, toward the top of the EPL table, and otherwise just one of the best teams in Europe, just didn't seem like it was in its class. They're out of the way. Elsewhere, Paris Saint-Germain absolutely levels Bayer Leverkusen, although as I understand it, Bayer Leverkusen was just fighting the injury bugs to that game. That series more or less over. I thought really the game of the week in terms of just competitive play, in terms of just exciting, kind of fearless, aggressive play, in terms of the fact that I actually just sat down and watched it the whole time, because I just kind of knew that Barcelona and that Bayern would just kind of win, and that as hyped as those matchups were, really the tail of the tape would show that the one team was there to win, although I was wrong. I mean, really, even though the result was what you and I sort of thought what was going to happen, what actually ended up happening is that the underdog got a red card and that was it. But that Atletico Madrid, just a lot of spirit. I don't know. I liked everything that I saw there. I'm curious to see what kind of run they can go on, although there's 4 or 5 teams that are just clearly better than what they are. So I think it's just going to be, they're going to go as far as their matchup dictates. But a fun week for the Champions League.
I think that's the kind of the story of the Champions League. This is one of the more wide open ones we've seen right now. You touched on Bayern Munich is playing at a historical precedent. Last year they allowed 9 total goals. That's it in the league across like 38 games. It's ridiculous. And then they went on to win the Champions League. Right now there are 2 teams that are just look unbeatable, and that's Bayern Munich and Real Madrid. Atletico Madrid looked like they were in that class for most of the year, and then they've lost like 3 of their last 4 before this AC Milan game. So Atletico Madrid has the talent, and of course what is it they always say? You don't play games on paper, you play them on the field. So this AC Milan team is 11th in Italy. They should have never got out of the group, but they're a tough team to beat at home. They beat Barcelona already this year. They played really well, and the argument could be made maybe they should have beaten Atletico Madrid at home, and let them hang around. Diego Costa was able to get that header in the 83rd minute that the ball should have never got to him at the back post. It was poorly handled clearance on the corner and all that. And I think that's just like the NCAA tournament or the NFL playoffs last year. You look at the Baltimore Ravens run through it, or those Giants teams that have made 2 runs or so. This is that part of the season. If you're a casual fan, even if you don't understand the game, anything can happen. Anyone can throw a wrench in there. We always use the March Madness comparison, and that's why. But
jumping on the March Madness parallel, with March Madness, what makes a difference is when you have a guard that can basically handle and score in flurries, and likewise when you have if you look at like just in general, like the teams that make these kind of miracle runs are the teams that get a striker that gets hot and that doesn't miss when the ball's in front of them, and you look at basically Diego Costa with that 82nd, 83rd just header. It was the kind of thing that how was he unmarked? How did he have that look? But at the same time, there wasn't anyone that doubted the second the ball got to him that he was gonna just snag it in there, because he's such an opportunistic guy that knows how to create goals with every part of his body. In Spanish they call those guys cazagoles, goal hunters, because they're just so, and he's just one of those, and winning in Italy, and now you get the home leg. Very, very impressive. And then this was supposed to be a game about Costa against Balotelli, about seeing who's going to come out and basically prove themselves. And Balotelli just kind of whimpered about the field. He was dogging it. He was looking for calls that weren't there, and he came out in about the 75th, 76th minute. So just you got to show up and make plays. Costa did, and that's why I think Atletico's on the cusp of something special.
I'd agree with you. And the converse to that is Arsenal had a penalty kick, 15 minutes in and missed it. That was their chance to really take hold of this match with Bayern Munich and really throw a wrench in things. And like you said, big players step up in big moments, and Diego Costa has certainly done that for Atletico Madrid over the last year. So, a couple things about Atletico Madrid. They've been playing well for over a year now. They beat Barcelona to win the Copa del Rey earlier this year. And another one of Diego Costa's attack partner, David Villa, was a key player in those Barcelona teams from 2008 to 2012 that were untouchable, kind of like this Bayern Munich team. But Ramon, I don't know if you have heard this, and props to Rudy Pierce. We had him on to talk Bundesliga a month or two ago. Texted me right after this happened that so we've been talking about it. Mesut Ozil misses the penalty kick for Arsenal. Manuel Neuer, the goalkeeper for Bayern Munich, those two grew up together in the Schalke Youth Academy as children. So a lot of people making the point that maybe Neuer knew what Mesut Ozil was going to do. And I'll tell you this, Ramon, if you watched it, that was just a shitty penalty kick, period. There's nothing more to it in my mind. I think Arsene Wenger even came out and said that in the press conference. It was a horrible take. It was garbage. Maybe he knew that he preferred that side, but I'm sorry. That's horseshit.
Man. No, that's wild. That's wild. I mean, sometimes, and sometimes it doesn't matter. But it was, charged and fun week in the Champions League. And so now basically 4 games in the books. We got another return leg next week in those 4 same matchups, and then I'm sorry, in 2 weeks.
2 weeks.
2 weeks.
Yeah, 2 weeks, and then we got the next 4 coming this week. So
and see, it'll
fun.
be the next round of games. Basically, the other side of that bracket will have been shaken out a bit by the time we record the next podcast. So let's take a minute to preview those, because we got some good ones. We have kind of an underachieving Manchester United taking on Greek club, very decorated club, Olympiacos.
Yeah.
Problem is, Olympiacos sold its best dude during the winter transfer window, and now the miracle run is about as over as it can be. I think we both think Man United wins this one fairly easily.
I'll tell you what I think. I think David Moyes is going to be shit-faced for like 2 weeks. He's going to be so happy they're in the final 8 after the year he's had. I mean, even if they can make a Final Four run in the Champions League, what that'll do to get people off his back. So I'll tell you what, Ramon, I have been on the Olympiacos train all year. I have been telling people they were going to – I would have put $50 down on Olympiacos to beat them. I would have made some money on this matchup. And then they go and sell Kostas Mitroglou to Fulham. And, that'll do it. That'll do it.
That'll do it. Elsewhere, I hate that I can't pronounce anything. Galatasaray, the Turkish champs, they got Drogba. They got Wesley Sneijder, the Dutch striker. They're playing Chelsea, Drogba's former team. So this is really, I think from in most people's mind, this is the most exciting matchup, especially because we get to see that Turkish crowd. Chelsea kind of has everything going. You think they're going to win the Premier League. I can't help but to agree with you now. But this matchup with that home crowd, with what's at stake here, I think you and I are both kind of feeling the Turks. Yeah.
I mean, Galatasaray, of course, famous for the 93 Champions League welcome to hell stuff they did for Manchester United. Chelsea, I think this is just a really bad matchup for Chelsea. You got a lot of emotion playing into this. You've got a team. Chelsea seems to do worse against the teams that like to shut it down and control it and kind of choke things off. Whereas when they play like teams like Man City or Liverpool that want to open it up, Chelsea seems to be more comfortable and able to kind of dictate the pace and play their own game. I just think it's a bad matchup. I think it's going to be one of those games that the atmosphere will be fun to watch. I don't think for the casual fan this will be the game for you. I think it's going to be very tactical. You'll see – I don't know that you'll see teams getting up and down. You'll see controlled movements. Chelsea should dominate the possession, but I think this is one of those things where you need one of those the British call them talisman players, a game changer, I guess, an X factor, a LeBron James, a Russell Wilson or what have you. Chelsea doesn't have that up top. That's been part of the reason I liked them to win the Premier League this year was the fact that they were pulling these games out with an over-the-hill Samuel Eto'o. Fernando Torres has shown glimpses of that, but I believe he's still hurt. They do have Oscar and Eden Hazard and stuff, but I like Didier Drogba with the game on the line. I mean, of course, they were down to Napoli 3-1 after the first leg in the final 8 when he led Chelsea to the 2012 title. Brings them back. They again, miracle run, and here he gets to do it against his old coach Jose Mourinho, his old club. I like Galatasaray to sneak this out. I think this is the upset of the round.
Stephen, say with me, Galatasaray. And I think a Turkish dude just appeared in the mirror. You sold me on it. You don't have to talk me into taking the underdog. Now that said, why is Chelsea good? You're right. They don't have anybody particularly in form, really just dropping goals for them. But what they do have, John Terry, Fernando Torres, Samuel Eto'o, over-the-hill dudes with an incredible amount of poise, and you only one of those guys to kind of be on to kind of carry you. And you're right. I think for the Champions League for a season, that's going to rack up a whole heck of a lot of points. In a 2-leg playoff, and it's the toughest away crowd in Europe, I'm gonna take the Turkish team too. And keep in mind, Steven's picks are of great value. Mine are completely useless because I watch soccer. This is the first year I've sat down and watched the Champions League cover to cover, as opposed to just kind of watching the last the rounds that they show on ESPN in the spring when nothing else is on anyway. This is the year I'm going cover to cover.
Your college basketball hangover time. It's
hangover time. Exactly.
The spring game hangover time.
The hangover time. No, I'm all in though. And all right. So we both like our friends at Galatasaray. I think you and I both are unanimous in thinking that Real Madrid takes down Schalke 04 fairly easily. Is there a case for the German Bundesliga team? The best.
There's a case,
world?
but the problem is Real Madrid. Okay, so we've played with these top 25 rankings. We were supposed to release one on Friday. I've had some technical gaffes. I've been traveling a lot. I'll just tell you this: there's Bayern Munich and Real Madrid and nobody else. I mean, they are on their own island. If Schalke was playing any other team, if Schalke was playing Barcelona, Chelsea, Man United, Dortmund, there would be a great case. Schalke is one of the hottest teams in Germany right now. They've turned it around. Them and Wolfsburg. Wolfsburg is a team you're going to want to know about next year. They went and got Kevin De Bruyne from Chelsea. They're looking at getting Mario Mandzukic from Bayern Munich. I'm telling you, the German team to look out for next year is Wolfsburg, but they're not there yet. Schalke right behind them. Schalke is just one place ahead of them in the table. A lot was expected of this Schalke team. They've got a lot of younger core players, but unfortunately they're running into a buzzsaw, and that's just the fact of the matter. Real Madrid is going to win this game probably 3-0, and then win again 3-0. It's just, like I said, a bad time for Schalke. If Schalke was in the Europa League, if they had finished third in their group and kind of parachuted down, I would be tabbing them to make a pretty big run. But Real Madrid definitely is going to buzzsaw them. And the other game that we haven't talked about yet, Borussia Dortmund versus Zenit St. Petersburg, will be a similar buzzsaw. Might fly under the radar a little bit more. Dortmund, of course, is the last year's runner-up in this tournament and won the Bundesliga, I believe, 2 or 3 years in a row, a couple years ago before this current Bayern Munich dynasty started. But Zenit St. Petersburg, the team they're playing, kind of snuck into the round of 16. They had one of the lowest point totals ever for a team to make it to the final 16. So Dortmund has just been hampered with tons of injuries, but it's going to be a bloodbath in both of those, I think.
Man, I just realized. Again, the case for Zenit is that it's hard to win in Russia, and they got Brazilian kind of all-purpose Mega Man Hulk, who is just kind of a monster from 30 yards out. But you're right. I think Dortmund should win. Should get through those legs. I think I'm certainly closer than the Real Madrid game. All right, so we dedicated an entire podcast late last year, basically saying, hey, the German Bundesliga, look out, best club in the world. They got 4 out of 16 teams represented in their in the Champions League. We're probably gonna have 2 out. We're probably gonna have 2 through. Spain, La Liga, a league that we continuously deride because it's so uneven. And yeah, it is. And yeah, all the revenue goes to the very top of the team. But we're looking at three. We're looking at three clubs advancing. You got your outliers. Your Turkish club here. I want to just basically mention two things now that I'm looking at the field. Number one, Serie A, Italy. Boy, just not the league they once were. Number two, English Premier League, the kind of media darlings of the world. They're going to be down to one delegate in the final eight, and that's Manchester United, the team that can't even crack the top five of the table in its own domestic league because it's so dysfunctional. And really, that's because of luck. And now, Stephen, this is a team that I just really have not sat down and watched. I know the names, but they're likewise a powerhouse that seems to be like a fairly nascent powerhouse. What's the case for Paris Saint-Germain?
Well, I mean, they've got Zlatan Ibrahimovic, who may be the best player in the world right now, which may surprise some people. The guy has done nothing but win wherever he's been. Inter, Barcelona, AC Milan, Juventus. Maybe he didn't play for AC Milan. I'm not sure. He's been all over the place. Ajax. They've got a pretty stout back line, but I don't think they're at that elite level. I mean, they're a team that's been kind of like Manchester City, put together with money. They're going to win the French league. They're going to be there. They're a tough out. It's going to depend on who they get, though. I think PSG will beat Barcelona if they get them. I do not think they'll beat Atletico Madrid, though. So they're kind of that team. I'm trying to think in terms of March Madness, because that's the easiest way to do this. Like you said, Man United may be the last English team left, and they're not even in the top five in England. I mean, that's the equivalent of, Baylor as an 8 seed making a run to the Elite Eight. Sometimes the matchups fall your way, and it's not indicative of the league, and it's hard to understand, but it is what it is. PSG, if they get the right matchup, could easily make the Final Four. They're usually hovering in the top 5 or 6 clubs in the world as far as common perception, and I think all the statistics and all of that would back that up. They have that game changer in Zlatan who can mix things up, so there's certainly, for them to win it all, there would not be surprise or shock, I guess, but maybe mild surprise, if that makes sense. They're maybe the Baltimore Ravens is a good way to put it from last year. I mentioned them earlier when I was doing a comparison, and Joe Flacco getting an insane contract is outrageous because he's a pretty average quarterback. But if they get the right players around Zlatan getting ready or getting hot at the right time, they could absolutely beat anybody in this tournament, if that makes sense. I mean, I've kind of been all over the place here. It's a good team. No, it's a great team. But do they have the firepower to compete with a Bayern Munich or Real Madrid? I don't think so. And actually, Real Madrid beat them 1-0 in a friendly in early January. Take those friendlies with a grain of salt. But, if they're a Final Four capable team, I'll give them that. I do not think they can win the Champions League, though.
Well, let me ask you this. Paris Saint-Germain or Manchester City? Very similar types of team, put together with money, but they don't necessarily have that philosophy.
I would choose Manchester City. I think their midfield is slightly better, but again, Manchester City's back line can be very suspect, and even the goalkeeping sometimes. I think Joe Hart's goalkeeping issues get way overblown, but when you've got a guy like Zlatan Ibrahimovic on the field. He just needs the slightest. I mean, you saw him do it to Portugal in the playoffs. He scored 2 goals against Leverkusen this week. One of them was a rocket from outside the 18 that was just one of those classic, phenomenal Zlatan Ibrahimovic wonder strikes, as they call them. I would choose Manchester City, but it would be almost even money.
Well, so, the Champions League is a prestige. It's the familiar brands. It's the, it's the powerhouses.
Mhm.
Simultaneously happening this week is the Europa League. Now down to the round of 32. It's basically comprised of the runners-up, right? If you don't qualify for the Champions League, you go play in Europa League if you're closer. For example, Tottenham Hotspur finished, I think, in 5th place, so just out of the top 4. They don't qualify for the Champions League. They go play in Europa, and it's that kind of like second-tier kind of teams playing in a European tournament. But you get some big names, you get some big clubs, and it's as I learned this week, a whole hell of a lot more fun than the Champions League because there's less pressure, considerably less pressure. There's less money involved. There's, I paid attention because I'm a Tottenham Hotspur fan as of this year, which seems ridiculous, but it's a very real, very organic thing that I've bought into wholly. I got the scarf to prove it. But Tottenham Hotspur going to...
And isn't that the joy of the internet, Ramon?
That's the fucking joy, my man. So Tottenham Hotspur, they go to Ukraine, not the Ukraine. They go to Ukraine. It's Ukraine, not the Ukraine. They go to Ukraine. They got to go through Kiev. That's the major port. Flying to Kiev, deal with the protests, whatever. They drive out to a smaller province. It's a city that I cannot pronounce the name. There's a lot of consonants back to back, and I don't want to butcher it, but the point is there's about 1 million people. So it's a nice, sleepy little town. They go up there.
Well, here, most people call them Dnipro because of the shorter name.
Dnipro.
It's a little easier to spit out there.
They go and they play Dnipro, which is one of the prideful teams of Ukraine. First leg away.
Or they may even be leading Ukraine right now. The Ukrainian league's a little
nice little league,
mixed up. So
yeah, funky little league. I was definitely feeling its style. So they go up there, they lose 1-0. Now a lot of that is because they started again. They rested some key reserves. Eriksson didn't come in until the 70th minute when manager Tim Sherwood was trying to get a result. He basically put a lot in the hands of Paulinho, and Paulinho delivered. And Danny Rose delivered on the back line, and Paulinho created quite a few chances. But basically, the guy that's been carrying Tottenham all of 2014 is Emmanuel Adebayor. This Togo-based Togoan. He's from Togo, folks. A striker who's just been on fire. He sat this one out. Spanish striker Roberto Soldado started. He basically, £26 million transfer. He can really only score off of penalty kicks. He's been a major disappointment. But basically, this was a great opportunity for Soldado to kind of like get his rhythm back. And unfortunately, I feel like he just put him back in a hole because the dude missed some major strikes, including he got a cross from Paulinho late in the second half. All he had to really do was just kind of like routinely tap it in, and he basically managed to kick it over the goal. It was an ugly game. The Ukrainian team draws a PK late. American, keeper. We all know him and love him, Brad Friedel. He guesses correctly on the PK, but of course the guy's like 50 years old, so he just doesn't have the reach. It hits the post. It slides into the goal. Tottenham goes down 1-0, but that was just the beginning because that was the early game on Thursday afternoon, taking place in Ukraine. So it just happened at about like noon Eastern. But then things got completely crazy, Stephen. And here's why I'm going on this long-winded rant. I just spent all afternoon watching these games on like mobile apps and streaming computers because they were unbelievably entertaining. I want to get your thoughts on what happened with Salzburg and with Ajax, but I want to first just shout out Porto and Frankfurt because Frankfurt is just it's a Bundesliga team. It's a very well built team. I can't tell when you look them up as players, they have a bunch of German talent. Porto from Portugal was their opponent, one of Portugal's kind of big three clubs. Porto built like a South American side, very aggressive. A lot of touches, a lot of takes. They actually have quite a few players from Brazil and from Colombia, and they actually even got a couple of Mexicans on there, Diego Reyes and Hector Moreno. And just this game was littered with wild goals. This dude named Ricardo Quaresma, I believe is his name,
yes.
who is a Portuguese guy that I would imagine.
And here, let me jump in for a second. This goal that you're talking about. He scored a goal exactly like this that was the wonder goal of the year of 2004 from the opposite side of the field outside the right foot. 2004. You'll have to Google him. I guarantee it's all over YouTube. He was a guy that was kind of like Carlos Vela. A lot expected of him. I mean, he played well in the Portuguese league, but he eventually went to Inter and just never really panned out. I mean, he was a guy that scored some ridiculous goals, some wonder goals coming up in the mid 2000s, and he's just never hit his stride. So you saw a glimpse of just how good he is, but he's just one of those guys that he's just most comfortable playing for Porto, and that's that.
But the thing about that game, the thing about Frankfurt and Porto is that you have one overachieving, one sort of underachieving power, and one just kind of like mid-level really good team, and it just made for such a really entertaining, contrasting game. Porto held a 2-0 lead late. Frankfurt just kind of stormed back because Porto, in true sort of Latin American fashion, just attacked, left the back door open, and Frankfurt was able to score 2 goals in like 15 minutes, and it was a 2-2 result. Just incredibly entertaining. But then you had Ajax, for those of you that are reading ESPN tickers, right? The legendary Dutch team that's kind of like slipped into this second-tier tournament, hosting a team from, Austria, Salzburg,
yes,
that just went ham on them. They're up 3-0 in the first half, but the real story was Jonathan Soriano of Salzburg hitting basically like a midfield.
He was
just
one
trick
step
shot
inside of midfield. He took 1.5 steps inside the midfield line and just drills it over the keeper. 35 minutes into the game, 3-0 up over the Dutch champions, about to be defending Dutch champions again. And this was a team that was 1 goal away from being in the final 16 of the Champions League instead of AC Milan. This could have been the team that was playing Atletico Madrid yesterday.
Man.
Not only that, this game is in Amsterdam, Ramon. This was in Holland. So, and if you follow either one of us, and if you follow either one of us on Twitter, you would have seen us conversing about this game beforehand, because I said, this is going to be a game you want to watch. And I'm telling you, this Salzburg team is for real. They are running away with the Austrian Bundesliga right now. Not that the Austrian Bundesliga is amazing or anything, but it's a solid league. It's an MLS level league. And Salzburg is drubbing folks. They've been drubbing folks in the Europa League all year, and they drubbed Bayern Munich 3-0 in a friendly in mid-January, shortly before the German restart. Now, does that mean they're a better team than Bayern Munich? No. Bayern Munich would probably beat them 2-0 solidly. It's a team, though, we use, and I want to back up real quick, Ramon. Earlier this year, when we were hyping the Bayern Munich and Chelsea UEFA Super Cup, which is the winner of the Europa League versus the winner of the Champions League, and kind of like a super final match, I compared the Europa League to the NIT. But here's the caveat. So like you said, it's the teams that are kind of middle of the conference that don't quite make the final cut into the Champions League. They go into this second tournament just like the NIT. But the caveat is the teams in the group stage that finish in third place, so Juventus, the Italian champions, Ajax, the Dutch champions, Porto, the Portuguese champions, they parachute into the round of 32. So imagine if we took the second round losers, all of them, from the NCAA tournament and dropped them in to the second round of the NIT. That's what you get. So now we could see, we're going to see some good games. You're going to see teams like Salzburg, who finished like second or third last year in Austria but have been building toward this. You're going to see them making these huge runs and beating teams like, Ajax and Porto and Juventus. And you say, who's this team from Salzburg? I didn't even know that they had a chance. And a lot of these teams, too, may have been in the Champions League qualifying. Before we get to the group stage, you have like a playoff to narrow in the final 32 teams. And so they may get knocked out of that and then parachute into the group stage of the Europa League as well. So there are a couple ways to get into the Europa League. But it's like you said, it's a lot of fun because you've got a lot of these teams, these smaller teams that have a lot to play for. You've got these bigger teams that sometimes feel like they don't need to be there, and it just really mixes things up. I'll tell you what, they're.
Oh, go ahead.
No, okay. I was gonna say I'll wrap up my rant here pretty quick. There are two teams you really need to watch for the smaller leagues. If I would equate this to, Ramon, having kind of like a neighborhood shop that serves the best coffee in town and the best tacos in town or whatever you like to eat. It's just kind of like your little secret. That's kind of what the Europa League's like. I've got these two teams that I'm hugely high on: Salzburg out of Austria and Ludogorets Razgrad out of Bulgaria. We're going to make some deep runs in this thing. And nobody's really watching this. We talked about Manchester United last week. They're going to lose money if they even make it into the Europa League. The semifinal payout is like 5 million euros, whereas in the Champions League it's like 35 million. So it's just kind of this off the hidden path or off the beaten path kind of deal where if you really love the game and you really want to see some entertaining stuff, this is where you want to go. Because a lot of those teams that like to play the flashier style of games, the Benficas and the Portos and whatnot, they're going to play these games. They're going to be playing their style. It's fun to watch, and it's may not be necessarily conducive to building a dynasty, but it's fun to watch.
No, absolutely. No, the Champions League is a night at the opera. The Europa League is a bender with your buddies at the local dive. It's got dollar beer night. It was a ton of fun.
That's a great way to put it. I completely agree.
And a programming note, all of these games, so we got 16 games happening on the same day. They're all going to be taking place February 27th, which is basically a week from Thursday, or this coming Thursday. So just look out for them. They're going to be on ESPN3. You can just watch them, and they're just going to be a bunch of fun. Porto and Frankfurt, 2-2, stakes are high. Watch that. Tottenham Hotspur back at White Hart Lane. They gotta get just a flat out win to be able to advance. But the thing about Tottenham Hotspur, one of those teams that just never really wins anything, has a great opportunity to really kind of like make a run and go after some hardware in this tournament. And they just sort of trip and fall in Ukraine, which seems very like Tottenham-esque from what's been my experience, but it's just going to be a bunch of fun. Look for Juventus and not Napoli from Serie A to kind of make a deep run. Look for Porto.
Oh, Fiorentina. Fiorentina from Serie A is the team that I would pick if I had to choose. Juventus and Napoli on the whole are better teams, but Fiorentina's hot right now. They beat the shit out of a Swedish team today, and they are in the final of the Coppa Italia. Also, Italy's national tournament. So that's a team, I'm going to tell you right now, if you want a bigger nation team, circle Fiorentina.
Well, actually, Fiorentina, quick correction. They did beat the shit out of a Nordic team 3-1. It was Denmark.
Oh.
Denmark. But good. I know you got some freestyles on this, Stephen, so don't worry. All good. Point is, watch it. This time next week, we'll know who's in the Sweet 16. It'll be just a bunch of fun. Can't recommend it enough. I'm sold. Speaking of watching stuff, Steve, I think we're in the home stretch of this podcast. We're coming up on a hot, fun weekend in soccer. What are you watching this weekend, man?
Well, Ramon, I know this one's gonna excite you. And by the way, I want you to talk to me a little bit about the way that Cruz Azul Puebla game ended last week that you were watching, because if you folks haven't seen it, you need to get out your tablets and get on YouTube now. But we'll get to that in just a minute. What I'm watching this week, big game with your boy Carlos Vela, Real Sociedad hosting Barcelona. Big game in Serie A. Big game.
Yeah.
Excuse me, La Liga.
La Liga. And actually, Barcelona, they have not won at Anoeta, which is the Real Sociedad home field, in their last 4 attempts. And they actually lost their 3-2 last time, despite having a 2-0 lead early in that one. So, I can't wait for that one. That one's Real Sociedad, Barcelona. It's going to be a ton of fun. Yeah, you stole mine, bro. So, yeah, I'm going to watch my Tottenham game on Sunday. I was purposely trying not to steal yours. I'll throw another one out on your behalf. Oh, no. I'm going in. I got a hot one.
Okay.
I got a hot one. All right. We got the teams that are making noise in Copa Libertadores from Liga MX. We got León and Santos Laguna, two teams that are holding serve and will likely advance out of the group stage in Copa Libertadores. down in South America. So again, Mexico repping in South America in that tournament. I think they're both going to advance. How about they're playing each other? How about Leon and Santos? And that's Saturday at 9 Eastern. Oof. That's going to be a hot one.
I like it. You did that. I think that's much more worth watching. It should be noted that these two teams have been really interesting in their domestic campaigns. Like they're kind of just going to do enough to make sure they don't fall down. If they're there at the end of the year, I think they'll be all right with it. But their focus has definitely been, or at least it's appeared to me, and Ramon, you may agree that their focus has definitely been the Copa Libertadores, the basically South American version of the Champions League that we have been talking about so much. Also of note, in our English Premier League, our bread and butter, Chelsea-Everton this week. Everton still without Romelu Lukaku, I would expect. Now, they did upset Chelsea earlier this year, but I would expect Chelsea to be able to walk away without them. But who's the striker for Cruz Azul?
They got several, but yeah. So Cruz Azul takes down Puebla. Marco Fabian, who was instrumental. He was instrumental in the gold medal team that won the one gold, beat Hulk and Neymar of Brazil in the gold medal game in the London Olympics of 2012. Marco Fabian, from there, kind of a touted prospect. He was basically part of Chivas Guadalajara, but that team was so bad that he really was just kind of buried in that team and didn't really get a chance to shine. But this year, playing with Cruz Azul, lifts Cruz Azul to a 1-0 result very late with a really just impressive kind of world-class goal. And yeah, I think you said this last week, Stephen. I can't agree more. Cruz Azul is going to run away with the regular season in Liga MX. But next month, which is only a couple weeks from now, Cruz Azul, a likely candidate for Mexican League champion, playing the defending MLS champion, Kansas City, our beloved Sporting Kansas City, in the CONCACAF Champions League. So that's going to be a really fun game that you and I have a specific rooting interest in. But Marco Fabian, a guy to keep an eye on, and he's definitely a guy that is now kind of on the national team radar. And if he can get down to Brazil, a pretty excellent sub.
Yeah, that'll be fun. Oh, going back to that Leon Santos thing, and we're going to be wrapping this up pretty quick, so if you're getting antsy, if you got to go pee, hold the phone. We're almost done. But man, isn't it too bad that Mauro Bocelli is Argentine and that Mexico can't nationalize him, because he has been insanely hot for Leon in the Copa Libertadores. Of course, he won the competition with River Plate a couple years ago, but really is never going to factor into the Argentine national team. It's just too bad that he can't be naturalized. That would be interesting if you could throw him, Uribe Peralta, and even if Fabian keeps his form, who cares about Carlos Vela or Chicharito? You guys, Mexico's got some serious attacking talent up top right now, rounding into form.
It's exciting, man. And you know how the Mexicans are, dude. If they could, they would. They would happily forge whatever paperwork was in front of them, and they'd make it happen. They tried to nationalize Ruben Sambuesa in November for the New Zealand qualifier. So it is what it is. All right, I think it's time for our red cards of the week.
It's nasty as a rat bait from the back. It's wicked. It's malicious. It's verging on criminal. I mean, it's one of those that a red card is really not enough.
All right, Ramon, I will start, and this one comes out of Venezuela. Italian Serie B side Pescara has been made aware of a scam in Venezuela in which young footballers are being offered a trial with the club for a fee, but a statement on the Italian club's official website says no such agreement with representatives in South America exists, and that they are taking action against the fraudsters who are using the club's name and reputation for personal gain. And that is just sad. So there's my red card of the week. People, trying to bilk Venezuelans out of their money, and everyone knows that country has enough problems as it is.
Stephen, my red card of the week is going to go to you because I want you to tell me about a story that we didn't get to in this program. Neymar, there's a shitstorm. What is it?
Oh, yes. We haven't covered this at all, I don't think. We may have mentioned it briefly about a month ago. Actually, no, we haven't covered this because this happened while we were on our own winter break, recharging our batteries, or as I used to say in my Spanish class, recargar las pilas.
Ooh.
So there you go. There's that. I know. Nothing like bastardized textbook Spanish from an American university in Middle America. Anywho, so long story short, even if you're not a soccer fan, you may have heard about this because CNN even touched on it. Santos is the Brazilian club where Neymar was purchased from. It turns out they were given some money, but then Neymar's dad was given some money, and he runs a company. And it's all been kind of weird and confusing, and it was a really complex deal. Spain has stepped in and said, you owe the tax man some money, bro. Barcelona's president resigned, not because there was anything illegal. FIFA has apparently cleared this and says it's a gray area, but everything's kind of up and up. Barcelona released their financials on it as soon as this broke. Again, it seems very murky. Spain is alleging that it's kind of a shell company that this is, and Neymar's dad is his agent, and apparently there are some third party interests, and it's all very murky. I do not have the time or the energy to really go into, or the knowledge financially to break this down. But long story short, very complicated deal. The Spanish crown has stepped in and said, we need to investigate this further. We need to make sure that everything was taxed correctly and that everybody that was paid needs to be. And it's just become an incredibly murky situation. But I don't think there will be any on-the-field ramifications from them.
All right, Stephen. International Players Anthem, America's leading podcast. We'll see you next week.
I don't know, where to begin. We are North Americans, and for those of you who still think we're from England, we're not.